What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And I just got off the phone with Jase Korleone, Jase and Mathis, who some of you guys will know. Him and Mac Minister both, Andre Dow, are serving multiple life sentences in Nevada for allegedly killing Fat Tone and Cocaine Cowboy, both individuals from Kansas City, while they were in Vegas. And supposedly they had gotten killed in retaliation for Mac Dre getting murdered, right? So Jase and Mac Minister were both convicted, and they've both always said that they were innocent and had various appeals and that sort of thing. And while this happened in Vegas, right, and they're doing time in Nevada, San Francisco police are central to this, right? So both these guys are from the city, and so San Francisco police had their hands all over it. And that's relevant because that's what's behind this new hearing that Mac Minister's having right now. And so that is, that's part of the update. The news has been out, but I think that there's a lack of kind of understanding of what's going on here, right? Because I'm seeing different claims being made. And so we're going to break that down real fast. It's not that complicated. And then give an update on Jase. So at the center of Mac Minister being able to get back in front of a judge is the recanting of the testimony by this informant, Antoine Mouton, whose real name is Antoine Cantrell, but San Francisco police gave him an alias so that he could tell. I think that alias was also for other reasons. You're going to see why. So Mouton testified that him and Mac Minister had a conversation on a footbridge in Vegas on December 5th, 2005, in which Mac Minister made reference to the murders. He also talked about another murder and talked about how he didn't care and snitches can get it and he doesn't care the police are looking for him and all this other stuff, right? And so, and this dude Mouton says that he grew up with Mac Minister, right? They're both from Fillmore. They grew up together, so he's very familiar with him, blah, blah, blah. Mac Minister has always said he has no clue who the dude is, right? Has never heard of him under either one of his names, has no idea who he is. So recently, relatively recently, within this past year, information came out that Mouton was actually incarcerated in Georgia from November 28th to December 7th, 2005, right? And so he's turned around and said, yeah, man, I was in jail. I was caught up on this trafficking of a minor charge. Dude was a pimp. And so they said I can get, favorable treatment if I said what they wanted me to say. So I said what they wanted me to say. And they, meaning San Francisco police, right? They, meaning Robert McMillan, who's a key figure in a lot of stuff in San Francisco. And so, we're going to get into that a little bit. I've gotten into that before in some of the Jase Korleone videos. There's a whole playlist. And in that, you'll see an interrogation video of his baby's mom telling on him. And she has later recanted that. She recanted it to me and many other people. And I have all that on, in the playlist. I'll link to it after this if you haven't caught up. And so, anyways, how did this happen, right? Well, Jase Boudin, district attorney in San Francisco, who just recently recalled, who I think is still going to stay the district attorney because he's going to run again, but that's another story. I have a lot of respect for him. I know him personally, and I think he was an incredible district attorney. He set up this thing called the Independent Investigations Bureau within the district attorney's office, but it's independent of anything else in the DA's office, right? It's its own little separate squad that answers to Chaser, but doesn't answer to really anybody else, and issues press releases and whatnot for everything that it looks at and every conclusion it reaches. And the job of that department is look at every use of force complaint against officers, look at any in custody deaths, right? And look at wrongful convictions based out of San Francisco. So again, even though these guys were convicted in Nevada, excuse me, it was based on work done by SFPD, right? Not based on stuff over there. And the work by SFPD was cultivating two informants. They cultivated Mouton against Mac Minister, and they cultivated Chanel, the baby's mama of Jason Mathis, Jase Korleone, in his case, right? McMillan was central in both of those. But so check it out. This bureau that Jason Boudin created is led by this dude, Lateef Gray, right? Lateef Gray grew up in Fillmore. So when he heard that Mouton was like, oh yeah, man, I know Dow from Fillmore. We grew up together. He's like, man, I never heard of this dude either, right? And it turns out Mouton lied about that too. He's really from Hunters Point, right? But Lateef Gray has been around prior to him taking this job with Jase to run the Independent Investigations Bureau. He was a civil rights attorney suing the police and everything else. So he's been about like social justice and accountability and whatnot through his whole career, right? Dude's a beast in the best of ways. And so he looked into it. He finds the booking records. He finds this stuff. He's like, hold on, man. So he's working hand in hand with Mac Minister's attorneys, even though he's within the DA's office. And see, that's the kind of culture that Chaser brought to the DA's office is accountability, right? And so with Jase, Mouton had reached out to Jase Korleone. Jase had an attorney at the time. He gave the letter to his attorneys, which is what Mouton said. He said, hey, man, if you got attorneys, shoot them this letter, tell them to holler at me. He shot the attorneys a letter. For all we know, the attorneys never reached back out to Lateef Gray, right? And that was like last year. He doesn't have those attorneys anymore. And so no way to really know. But Lateef got everything. And so I actually reached out to Lateef Gray today. I called his office and left a voicemail, and I shot him an email on behalf of Jase. So to have him look at this, because Robert McMillan, again, also cultivated Jason's baby's mama. And a very quick recap, but the way that her testimony was brought forward and used against him, and Jason Mac Minister were tried separately. At the beginning, they were tried together for a while, and then all of a sudden their trials were split, right? And I think because the SFPD and the DA's office over there in Vegas tried every way to get these dudes to flip on each other, and it never happened. They never flipped on each other. They never nothing, right? But there's nothing to flip about because neither one of them fucking killed anybody. But they didn't even point the finger or try to get heat off of them, as we often see. So props to those, both of those guys for holding their mud for 20 years or whatever it's been, right? But hopefully justice is coming around the corner. So McMillan, when Chanel, Jase Korleone's mom, originally made a statement to police, she didn't say nothing about Jason murders, right? What happened was he had pulled up to the house to pick up his kid. Chanel got out of pocket. Jase had another female with them. That female hopped out. They get into it. The police are called. Jase is picked up because he's wanted in questioning for this homicide, but they don't got nothing on him, right? So she goes and gives a statement to Las Vegas PD at the police station in San Francisco 2 days after Jase is arrested, right? And in that statement, she gives this whole story about Jase Korleone and how he admitted to all this stuff, everything else. And we picked all that apart in the videos. You guys can see it. And so McMillan, then when they go to court, when Jase goes to trial, she's not there. So the judge is like, man, she ain't here, then her statement can't come in because she has to be the one to say her statement. Robert McMillan is like, actually, she made this spontaneous, excited statement in the heat of the moment of Jase's arrest because she was in fear for her life and for her brother's life and all this other stuff, right? So it's like a loophole to get a statement from somebody admitted in court without that person being able to say it. But it's meant to be for people who make a statement as they're dying, right? Or people that make a statement out of shock and just trauma. But the statement that he read was her statement 2 days later, in which she told. And those two things had nothing to do with each other, right? So Robert McMillan has a long history. Some of you guys are aware of True Love, right? Another dude out of San Francisco, black dude, who did years for the murder of this Polynesian cat in Sunnydale, right? And got his conviction overturned. And then he actually sued a bunch of SFPD officers, and 4 of them went to trial. Robert McMillan was one of them for, tampering with witnesses, tampering with evidence, wrongful prosecution, right? All kinds of stuff. And McMillan was cleared, and this other cat was cleared, but 2 other police officers were found guilty at the trial. And he got like 10 million awarded from the city, right? And so for wrongful prosecution and all the consequences that came from that. Same thing in that case. There was a witness who recognized him from a VH1 reality show and was like, oh yeah, that dude, I seen him and he killed the Polynesian, but the lady was only showing pictures of him. She was given a description of him before she looked at pictures. Like, there was all kinds of faultiness going on there. Robert McMillan was at the center of that too. And there's other cases, right? These are not the only ones. And so anyways, Mac Minister got back in court in front of a judge. And this conversation about this witness recanting, right? Mouton taking back his statement and whatnot. That conversation was started, right? The judge has continued it out to September 23rd. So that conversation will continue in September. He's not released. His conviction has not been thrown out. None of that has happened, right? He's merely getting a chance to make an argument in front of a judge that this statement was BS, and this statement, the harm of that statement being put before a jury is so great that I need another trial, right? That I need to go back to court and not have this statement. And so because the courts look at the harmfulness of an error, so sometimes you'll hear people that'll file appeals and whatnot, and the court turns around and was like, man, you're right, that was out of pocket. But it wasn't so out of pocket that your guilt or innocence hinged on that, because there was all this other evidence. So we don't really feel like that tipped the scale, right? It'd be pretty hard to argue that a witness statement of this kind didn't tip the scale, right? And so I would suspect him getting a new trial. I don't think the charges will just get thrown out. I think he will be granted a new trial. And what might happen is the DA's office out there turns around and says, hey, plead out to this lesser charge and we'll give you time served. I don't know what he would do in that situation. I'm not in contact with him. I talk to Jase. I don't talk to Mac Minister. So I don't know. But as much as these dudes have proclaimed their innocence, I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, no, we ain't taking a deal on time served. Then again, trials are always risky, and the cops have proven that they're shady. And so do you take that risk of going to trial and potentially being convicted again and being in the same shoes? And I don't know, the details, the intimate details of exactly what other evidence, but I know that for Jase's case, a lot of it centered on his baby's mama's testimony. And in Mac Minister's case, a lot of it centered on this dude Mouton's testimony. And so we will see what happens. This him going to court has no bearing on Jase's case, in the sense of that witness was just against Mac Minister in when Mac Minister's trial was separated, after his trial was separated from Jase Korleone's. So that doesn't have a bearing on Jase Korleone's case. However, the circumstances and the improper conduct by officers, especially by the same officer in a very similar way, lends credence, lends credit to what Jase Korleone is saying. And I think the Independent Investigation Bureau is going to pick that up. And the thing with the DA's office is, because they have the power of being a district attorney, they can appeal a court and say, hey, man, this dude needs a new hearing. Like, you can exhaust your appeals on your own and your habeas petitions and all that other stuff. But even if all that's true, the district attorney can always petition a court and say, hey, man, we found some dirt on our side that we think you should hear. That's always possible. So there's no real time limit on that. It is a question of whether the Independent Investigations Bureau will continue to exist. It depends on who becomes the district attorney. Chase is talking about rerunning again. He has a ton of support. I think he should rerun. I think if he did, he'd get elected. Keep in mind, in his recall, he didn't lose to another candidate. It was just a question of, should he stay the DA or not? And people said no. But a campaign is a different story. And so I would expect him to remain the DA, right? To get reelected as DA, because there's not another candidate that is going to beat him. But just because I expect it doesn't mean that's how it's going to go. So that goes to show too the power of the district attorneys that folks elect in their communities, and we oftentimes ignore that position, right? People look at city council, people look at mayors, presidents, senators, whatever. Don't sleep on the district attorney, man. That is a very important role. And we have seen in multiple areas, right, that the district attorney can have a positive impact on rates of incarceration and consequences and that kind of stuff within the system, right? And so it's not always, not all DAs are the devil, most of them are, but there's voting power there, you know what I mean? And yeah, so anyways, that's the update, man. Help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it, and help your community because they need you. Check out the playlist, man, on this Jase Korleone stuff. If you haven't seen it already, there's some fascinating stuff there. And plus, you get to watch the interrogation video and watch his baby's mama just BS through the whole thing, right? You get to watch a setup as it happens. So you guys take care. I will be back tomorrow, man, around the same time.